Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Garcia, and I'm the transportation planner for the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. NEJA is a nonprofit citywide membership network linking grassroots organizations for low-income communities of color in the struggle for environmental justice. And we're also part of the Electrify New York Coalition, a statewide coalition of advocates for environmental justice, public transportation, social justice, and good jobs. And we're fighting for a clean, equitable electric transportation future for New York. And we're so excited for today's event, today's webinar, for the release of the New York Proximity Mapping Report. So we're here with the Environmental Defense Fund, who are the authors of this report, the Clean Deliveries Act bill sponsors, Deputy Senate Majority Leader Senator Gianaris and Assemblymember Marcella Mataines. But we also have some co-sponsors of the bill, including Senator Pete Harckham and a few allies here today for the release of this report. Across the nation, we have experienced a rise in e-commerce that the global pandemic has exacerbated in recent years when we were asked to stay home and socially distance. This rise has led to a surge in e-commerce mega warehouses to meet this demand of same-day and next-day shipping. But these facilities also bring a range of health and environmental hazards. Particularly, these facilities need hundreds and thousands of daily vehicle trips to meet the next-day and same-day shipping demands. And with this increase in vehicular traffic, we're also witnessing an increase in air pollution. However, due to local rules that allow for the as-of-right siting and operation of e-commerce mega warehouses and the location of highways, many of these warehouses are located near low-income and communities of color. These are the same communities that have already been overburdened by pre-existing air pollution and chronic diseases, and we're seeing the same story here in the state of New York. To illustrate this more clearly, we have this report, and I'd like to call up, Aileen Nolan from EDF to go over the report, and she has a very short presentation to share with you all. Aileen.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, Kevin. We're so pleased and honored to be here with the coalition to walk you through a few of the findings of what's going on around warehouses in New York State. First of all, I will say that communities around warehouses have been raising the alarm for some time, and what I'll be talking about today really builds on that advocacy and was inspired by that advocacy. And I'll also say it is an undercount. Everything that we're saying here is an undercount because the information about where warehouses are and their impact is very spotty. So we've done our best, but even with what we're able to show you today, it's clear that the risk of warehouses is not felt equally, and the need for action is urgent. So what's the high level picture? We have 4.8 million neighbors of warehouses in New York State living within a half mile of 2,400 warehouses. This is important because the trucks that serve them bring air pollution, noise, and other hazards, even as those trucks perform an essential role in our economy. One thing to remember is that trucks emit significant pollution while idling, and traveling at low speeds can be even more pollution than when they're traveling at highway speeds. Transportation is the fastest growing source of emissions in many places. And another thing that's important to realize is the pollution really varies. It can change dramatically from one end of a block to another. So it really matters who's living right beside those warehouses. The warehouses are clustering around highway interchanges and the arterials. Due to the history of redlining and other industrial policies, the people living beside those facilities are largely Black, Hispanic, Latino, and living in poverty. So why do we care? Just to reinforce this idea, what does it mean to live beside a warehouse and the trucks that serve it? New science is showing that pollution from trucks, in particular nitrogen dioxide, is causing new diagnoses of asthma. It's been known for a while that pollution can cause an asthma attack, maybe send someone to the hospital, but the new science is showing that pollution causing a diagnosis of asthma, which can change the trajectory of someone's life. So just in New York City area, for example, 21,000 new diagnoses of childhood asthma every year are linked to nitrogen dioxide, and that's largely from transportation pollution. And then even the risk of having asthma is not felt equally, and Black children are 3 times more likely to be hospitalized from asthma than other children. So Kevin started off by talking about the growth of e-commerce, the growth in warehouse space, and we're really seeing that in the deep dive we did. A 6% increase in the past 10 years of warehouse space, and 170,000 daily truck trips across this daily truck trips in and out of those warehouses. And that's just to serve the warehouses that are over 100,000 square feet. That is definitely an undercount of the truck trips going into warehouses. And we're seeing significant children and elderly living very close to those warehouses in New York State. The risk of that pollution from the trucks in and out is not felt equally in New York State. It's that neighbors of warehouses are much more likely to be Hispanic, Latino, Black, and living in poverty. So we'll do a little bit of a deep dive of different regions in New York State where we're seeing warehouse clusters. And one point to emphasize here is it's really not just a New York City problem. This is a risk that people are facing all over the state. Starting in Western and Central New York State, over 300,000 people within just a half mile of the warehouses. Unequal burden for those neighbors of warehouses. In the Hudson Valley, almost 500,000 people living within half mile of a warehouse, significant unequal burden there. Long Island, 2.5 million people living within a half mile. You see clusters really all the way out, even places that folks might not consider, highway corridors. And then in the 5 boroughs, 3 million people living within half mile of warehouses. This is where we're seeing also significant growth, moving closer in to where people live. And we do have additional details. We won't go through all of this right now, but when you look at the breakdown for the Senate districts, every Senate district is facing disproportionate burden. It might be different levels, different population groups, but the risk is not spread equally anywhere, and there are significant numbers. So for example, in Senator Gianaris, we have almost 14 million warehouse square feet, and at least 7,000 trucks each day going in and out, serving those warehouses, and then traveling on local roads. So I know others on the call may have some more details to say about what the bill actually does, but one thing I've really tried to emphasize that the air pollution varies even from one end of a block to another with significant health impacts. And so as New York State already is in some senses a leader trying to get clean trucks on the road. And what's really important is that those clean trucks work first in neighborhoods that are already overburdened by air pollution. And that's why it's really important why this act is an important addition to other forms of climate leadership that New York State is already taking, because it focuses those clean trucks first where they can do the most good.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Aileen, and thank you to the EDF team for that really comprehensive and illustrative report, really highlighting the disproportionate impacts of these mega e-commerce warehouses that go unregulated. And you're completely right. We need to regulate them, and we're going to need every tool in the box to fix the issues that are caused by these mega e-commerce warehouses. And you started, mentioning a little bit about the Clean Deliveries Act as being a clear solution to reduce the emissions from these facilities. And I want to call upon one of the bill sponsors who is a longtime advocate for better air quality in New York State, Senate Deputy Majority Leader Gianaris, to talk a little bit more about the bill and why he's taking the charge on this. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you to New Yorkers for Clean Power and the EDF for this report. It really shines a light on why this is so important, and I appreciate the data that's in this, because we can all look at the trucks rolling down our streets every day and realize instinctively that this is a problem, but now we have real numbers to back it up. Think about this: that report indicates 4.8 million people in our state live within a half a mile of one of these large warehouses, 50,000 square feet or more. That is 1/4 of the entire state's population. So 1 in 4 people in the state lives within an impact zone, if you will, of these warehouses. And we have done so much work in the last several years since we took the Senate majority in 2019. Myself, Senator Harcum, and all our colleagues have worked really hard to combat certain aspects of problematic air quality sources. I've been doing this since I was in the assembly years ago, which is trying to beat back the emissions coming from power plants that proliferate Western Queens in my area. We've made some real progress on that. We have the CLCPA. We're moving towards a fossil fuel-free power production environment. And yet now we just replaced it with all these trucks traveling in and out of these warehouses. So it is not a coincidence that my district in particular had so many of the awful emissions and high asthma rates associated with power production. And now we've just replaced it with these warehouse trucks. I have the second most on this report of these large warehouses in my district than anywhere else. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the typically aggrieved communities, those that are disproportionately communities of color, low-income communities, face the burdens of dealing with the consequences of everybody else, going on Amazon or wherever and buying their products. And so we cannot allow that to happen. We have proposed legislation now that would, in essence, impose a sort of environmental impact assessment on any new large warehouse that's proposed or anyone undergoing a major modification. The DEC would come up with a point system to require any such proposals to comply in a way that minimizes the environmental impact of these facilities, and that'll put us on a path towards getting them under control. Often in government, we are slow to react, and market forces kind of take on a life of their own. That's what's happened here. The explosion of the online economy has just led to these companies that we know from history don't give a damn about the people they're affecting, other than making money and taking their money and selling them goods. They're just dropping their warehouses wherever it's convenient for them, wherever it's cheaper for them, without concern for the communities that have to host them. And so now it's up to us as policymakers to catch up and impose some real regulations on what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's why I'm so glad to see Senator Harcum here, who is a real environmental champion in our state as well. We have a number of co-sponsors, and we'll continue to get more as we work to get this through the Senate. I know Assemblymember Matenis is working very hard on her side, and hopefully together we'll get this done in this legislative session. So again, thank you to my colleagues, and thank you to everyone from the advocacy community who is working so hard to get this done. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Gianaris. Yes, so we, as you were mentioning, we do have a lot of sponsorship for this bill. And, one of the folks who recently signed onto the bill, and we're super happy that they were able to sign on, is the chairman of the Committee on Environmental Conservation, Senator Pete Harcum. And, I'd love to have you come up and, share a few words as to why you are sponsoring this bill and why we need to make sure that this gets over the finish line.
Well, thank you very much. Great to be with you. Thank you to New Yorkers for Clean Power, EDF. What a powerful report. Certainly want to thank Senator Gianaris and Assemblymember Matenis and all of our colleagues. This is an incredibly important bill. To follow up on what Senator Gianaris said, this is like squeezing a balloon. We begin to clean up the emissions and the co-pollutants in one area of our economy, and then it grows as you squeeze it out the other side of your fingers, and that's exactly what's been happening here. And the whole point of the CLPA is geared toward restorative justice, not replacing one source of pollution with another source of pollution. And the health impacts we know of diesel soot are severe. You know, asthma, heart disease, birth weight, a host of other maladies for the elderly, for children, and it does disproportionately impact communities of color and environmental justice communities. That's just a fact, and that's what this report quantifies. In my district, we have 22 warehouses and growing, and as this report states, 90% of those folks are people of color in our communities that have already been disproportionately impacted, as Senator Gennaro said, by factories, by power plants, by in one case a waste incinerator. So you know, we really need to get a handle on this. This is about not just reducing emissions, but it's about investing in public health, protecting our public from harmful co-pollutants. And this bill is a great bill. And so I'm proud to support my colleagues who have brought this forth, and we're going to push hard for this year. So thanks for letting me be here and say a few words. And again, thank you to both of the sponsors for an excellent bill.
Thank you so much, Senator Harpham. And again, we appreciate your support on this bill, and we're going to make sure that this gets over the finish line this session. I do want to make a note. Assemblymember Mataines, unfortunately, is unable to join us today. She's had a couple meetings that have come up, and you know, we do want to give her a big shout out for her support. You know, she's been a long-time advocate for this bill, and for regulating these warehouses, both at the local and state level. And, you know, she was one of the first ones to, you know, really take a stand and, you know, raise this flag. But, you know, we also understand that there will be some worker, you know, implications with this bill. And, you know, I want to invite Antonio Rosario, Teamsters Local 804 organizer, who's been fighting for better working conditions and fairer wages for workers at these sites. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your time. As a proud member of Teamsters Local 804, we represent 8,400 UPS workers, and you know, we have a fair share of warehouses in the New York area, but not as many as Amazon is popping up. There are corporations like Amazon that are totally taking advantage. They're building facilities at a rate that no one can really comprehend. You know, the communities and allies here are trying to clean up this Amazon problem. In 2013, there was 0 Amazon warehouses in New York State. Today, there are over 60 all over New York. You know, the Teamsters in solidarity with many of the local communities who are fighting back against pollution, traffic, dangerous jobs from Amazon's last mile warehouses. They have the highest injury rate of any corporation. Their turnover rate is ridiculous, over 150%. Just turn over employees at a ridiculous rate. They're a very dangerous corporation going on unchecked. People have woken up to these hidden costs of Amazon and their fast delivery. Red Hook and other neighborhoods around the state are paying the price. Amazon workers who make less than half of many of my union siblings are, you know, and are paying the price. And our UPS workers, they're being affected by this because they're driving down industry standards. Standards that have been fought for Teamsters for many decades. Many communities are saying no to the new Amazon warehouses. They know that it's wrong, and they know that these warehouses just propping up everywhere and springing up like playing whack-a-mole is just getting out of control. But we're doing something about it. You know, we're trying to. This Clean Deliveries Act, that's what it's about. It's about helping situations like this. That's why we stand behind it as Teamsters. And we believe in this project. We believe in the communities. You know, our kids are working. Our kids are going to school in these neighborhoods, breathing in this pollution. So we're worried about our workers and their children as they're out there delivering, and their kids are going to these schools. You know, it's time for somebody to put some kind of restrictions on what's happening here. It's not fair to the people. It's not fair to the workers. And I believe in this bill. I believe this is something that's going to be able to change moving forward, helping many people. So I'll just leave it at that, quick, short, and to the point. And again, we thank you so much for your time, and Teamsters Local 804 does stand behind it.
Appreciate it, Tony. Yeah, we appreciate the Teamsters, support on this. We understand that, it's not just the communities and households, families that live near these facilities, but like you said, it's the schools, it's the students, but it's also the workers who, work in the area, but also who work, at the sites that are, going to be that are negatively impacted by the emissions from these facilities. But, when we start seeing these improvements and when we start regulating these facilities, we'll see, benefits and better qualities of life and working conditions for all of them. Our last speaker, is Jackie Cohen, who's the Director of Climate and Equity Policy for Tri-State Transportation Campaign, one of our allies and coalition members in the Electrify New York Coalition. Jackie?
Thanks so much, Kevin. Good morning. It is still morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to give a special thanks to our elected leaders, to Senator Gianaris, who is my representative here in Astoria. So very happy to see you spearheading this bill. I want to thank Assemblymember Mataines. I want to thank Pete Harcum, Senator Harcum, who is my hometown representative. So it's very exciting to see that we have elected officials, our leaders are coming together from all parts of the state to support the Clean Deliveries Act. I want to thank Tony Rosario from Teamsters Local 804. It's been a real honor to have Teamsters 804 on board in support of this bill, and just, to have your voices here with us. And thank you, huge thank you to EDF for the incredible research and reporting. As we've heard, this is a difficult issue to really pin down, and in part why we need the Clean Deliveries Act, why it's so urgent to pass it, so we can better audit and monitor where these facilities are popping up and the real impact they're having on our communities. So today we're here to confront a stark reality that's highlighted in EDF's amazing and illuminating report. What struck me was that 1 in 4 New Yorkers, that's about 4.8 million people, live within a half mile of a mega warehouse. And as Aileen noted in her comments at the start of this press conference, that's potentially an undercount, right? It's hard to really truly identify where each one of these facilities are. So the odds of that number being much higher than 4.8 million people are pretty good. So this is not a distant problem. It's at our doorsteps, literally. Even if you don't live near one of these mega warehouse facilities, the odds are that you're consuming goods that come from one and go onto a truck that are delivered to your doorstep. And it's impacting communities all across New York State, from Buffalo to Long Island. These mega warehouses are integral to e-commerce surge, and they're more than just storage spaces. They're really the epicenters of relentless truck traffic in our communities, causing and escalating air pollution. The consequences of these trips are severe. They disproportionately affect disadvantaged communities and communities of color. And as we heard, children, seniors, low-income families in these areas are the most vulnerable, facing increased health risks like asthma due to poor air quality. So the Clean Deliveries Act is a direct response to this problem. It seeks to establish crucial regulations for warehouse operations, demanding a shift to zero emissions vehicles and cleaner, more efficient transportation methods. We know that in New York State, transportation as a sector is the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions. This would significantly reduce that. This bill is not just about addressing pollution, it's about correcting a systemic injustice where economic development has come at the expense of our most vulnerable communities' health and well-being. So our state stands at a crossroads. The passage of the Clean Deliveries Act is critical in mitigating the environmental impacts of these warehouses, making our air cleaner and our streets safer. It's a step towards a future where economic growth and environmental health go hand in hand. So it's time now for action. And I urge our lawmakers to continue to sign on and support this tremendous legislation. I urge Governor Hochul to sign it into law and to remember that there are 4.8 million New Yorkers living in the shadows of these warehouses. I call on Albany to support the Clean Deliveries Act, which will be a move towards a cleaner, fairer, and healthier New York for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I will try to top that off. You said a lot, but you're right. You know, this problem is not in the distant future. It's right at our doorstep, and we need to make sure that we're regulating these facilities. What the Clean Deliveries Act would do is, create this indirect source rule for the transportation sector and really target the emissions from these warehouses. And these warehouses are unregulated, and that's generally due to local regulations, zoning and laws, and they're generally exempt from any seeker. So no environmental review, no public review process. So a lot of folks are just waking up with these facilities, down their street or in their communities, and have to live with the impacts of them. Last few things, the final report will be on the EDF Global Clean Air website, which is globalcleanair.org, and will be shared via social media. The link will also be shared to all the registrants shortly after this webinar ends. And then last but not least, we do need support for this campaign. We need to make sure it gets over the finish line so that we begin to regulate these mega e-commerce warehouses and start reducing emissions. This impacts everyone. So, there was a link shared in the chat, so you can take action with us to make sure that we pass the Clean Deliveries Act. The website is bit.ly/clean deliveries. It is case sensitive, so just make sure it's all lowercase. But thank you all so much for listening to the webinar. Thank you so much to EDF for this really in-depth, comprehensive report. Thank you to the bill sponsors and to Senator Harckham and to our Electrify New York coalition members and to Teamsters for being here with us. This is a really illustrative report, and we'll make sure that we get the Clean Deliveries Act passed. And with that, that sort of ends the webinar portion of this event, but we would be happy to take any questions from reporters. The only thing we ask is if you are a reporter asking a question, if you could just state your name, what outlet you work with, and then ask your question. If there are no questions, we are happy to end the session here. Thank you all so much again, and be sure to check out the report on EDF's website and on social media. And again, it will be shared with all the registrants who register for this event. Thank you all so much. Take care.